This is a Bergen Film Club podcast.
Like an old movie removed from the frame, I am floating and looking for someone to blame. Won't you project me on the walls of your heart? I'm waiting for the real thing to start.
Hello and welcome back to The Real Thing. We are back now for season 2. That's so exciting. We're ready for a new semester, a new program of awesome films from Bergen Film Club. I'm excited, as are many other people, I'm sure. So let's go. I'm Joel Lawrence. I'm the host of this podcast, have been for some time now. Hopefully we'll keep being it in the future as long as I don't get kicked off by the board. As mentioning said board, this podcast is an extension of Bergen Film Club, where we explore the themes and topics around the films in the upcoming program, which is autumn 2023. Like every episode today, we have an amazing film to talk about. But firstly, I would like to introduce our guests that we have today, the Real Thing alumni. You two are both the most featured guests on the podcast. In fact,
Let's
so
go.
we have Carolina Tranberg and
Hello.
Bendik Vigsnes.
Hello.
Hello. How are you guys doing?
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
And I think I am here on this podcast today because I am the only one in the Bergen Film Club board who is intellectually capable of separating artist from artistry. So I am actually capable of enjoying Armie Hammer's performance in this film. And that is why I'm here, to balance out the aggression from the rest of you.
We wouldn't have shown the film if we didn't manage to separate the two.
That's irrelevant, Carolina. That's irrelevant.
Okay.
I don't think I have aggression. I'm okay with it. I've made my peace with him being
Because it's
accountable.
hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can forgive anyone if they're hot enough. Before we get into the meat, the main part of the episode, as always, I like to talk about some recommendations, some stuff that we've been listening to, watching. I know that I have mine. Would you two like to give some recommendations of your own?
I have two.
Go for it.
Should I go for it? So the first one is this TV series, And Just Like That.
Yes.
Season 2 has started. It's a hot mess. For those who don't know, And Just Like That is like a sequel show to Sex and the City. So we still follow the same gang except Samantha. I think this is the first time after season 1 I watched a show and been like, oh, this is what people mean when a show has gone too woke.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to say too woke in that sense. There are some like interesting characters that have been added, and it's fun, but it's like it's so cringe the way they do it.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
It feels like, why are you doing it this way? This must be a joke. It's like one of those, I know it's a Tranberg, but I can't look away. I have to know.
That's the best kind of show.
Yeah, so if you want to see something silly and a bit cringy, and think back to like how great the show Sex and the City was,
Yeah.
and cry about it a little bit, that is so bad now, you should watch And Just Like That. And my second suggestion, I don't need to talk a lot about this, it's the third Magic Mike film, Magic Mike's Last Dance.
Sexy.
I love Magic Mike. I can't explain it, but the films are so fun and just, yeah, incredible. So yeah, it's on my top 5 2023 releases this year.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah, it's all I'm gonna say is I believe in Channing Tatum supremacy.
Yeah.
And with that, we can say that this will be the last episode Joe Lawrence ever hosts of the real thing.
If Channing
that's
Tatum
true,
is the
Russ,
thing
that's-
that takes me down, that's okay. I'm fine with that. If Magic Mike ends my career, that's okay.
Okay, yeah.
Bendik, what do you have?
I was trying to go through what I've seen recently. I saw a pretty good creature feature from the early 80s called Alligator. It was surprisingly well written, cult classic. It's recently been restored. Not the best effects, the alligator changes size frequently, but overall it was a pretty gory and fun time with Robert Forster in a great leading role. I also saw a delightful TV show on Disney Plus called American Born Chinese, which I thought was excellent. It borrows from Chinese mythology, such as the Monkey King and all that stuff, and it sets it in an American high school where this American-born Chinese kid goes, and then he meets this Chinese kid who comes from China, and this Chinese kid has magic powers, and then they get involved in this Stranger Things-esque plot with really good kung fu fighting and wire work, really well done. And very charming. It has both the main characters from Everything Everywhere All at Once. And one last thing, Gunnibal, a horror TV show on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Gunnibal with a G, Gnannibal, about this police officer. It's a Japanese TV show and about this police officer who goes to this little quiet mountain village to be the police officer after the previous one disappeared. And then he starts to suspect like a conspiracy in the village involving cannibalism and a lot of sinister stuff. It's really, really good. I'm begging for a season 2, and they haven't renewed it yet, but those episodes that are out there now on Disney Plus, fantastic.
I have a podcast recommendation, a podcast that I've spoken about before, but it's Last Podcast on the Left. It's a true crime podcast. But I wasn't like, when I recommended it last time, I wasn't really like listening to it. Like I have my podcasts that I like fall asleep to, because I ran out of episodes of My Favorite Murder, another true crime podcast, and then I started listening to this. But now I've actually been listening to, like they do different series about like big serial killers, or like big crimes that have happened. So far I've listened to like Eileen Wuornos, John Wayne Gacy, and John Benet Ramsey, and it's just really great. It's really, really well researched, and they are very funny guys, which is like, I guess, kind of morbid, like the stuff that they're joking about, especially on the John Benet episode.
Oh no!
I was about to say, or John Wayne Gacy. How do you make that funny?
I listened to that.
I mean,
today.
he's a clown.
Finished that. Yeah, he is a clown.
He's a clown.
Go.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it, and I think you would really like it, Bendik, because they're not afraid to stray from the woke narrative.
Oh,
I don't know if that's a compliment or not.
But it makes me laugh so much. Yeah, I find it so funny.
What are they called? Did you say?
The Last Podcast on the Left.
Last Podcast on the Left. Yeah, I remember you plugged it before. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's
It's weird.
Really great podcast. I really recommend it. Now that I'm actually listening to it, I can confidently say that it is good. And it's also great to fall asleep to, apparently. My second recommendation is I saw Insidious 5, The Red Dawn, last week.
Was it good?
I really, really enjoyed the first 80% of the movie. And then it's so clear that there was like massive studio interference with the end, which sucked, because then the ending was bad and really rushed. And I was so disappointed, because it's almost like I felt like the film could have been like 40 minutes longer. It ended so quickly.
Oh.
Which was so disappointing. And it was like everything was building up so nicely, and it was really good jump scares, really good like it was more of like the relationship side of it rather than scary, which I really enjoyed. Like the dad having like memory fog because he had his mind erased, and it was really cool. And then at the end, it was just terrible. So I was very disappointed by the end, which sucked.
Yeah.
But it's been doing very well in the box office, which is nice. But this has driven me to rewatch the first two, and they are great. So I think I'm just going to recommend the entire Insidious franchise because those
Patrick
films
Wilson
rock.
is a dope.
He is a
I'm
dope.
not
I
even
love
sure
him.
if I watched them all. I've watched one.
Oh,
I know I watched one.
I
I
think they're so
watched
good.
one about the old lady.
Like the drag queen.
No, not the drag queen. The old lady, the medium, the spiritual medium or whatever she is. She's
Oh
in the
yeah,
first
that's
one.
yeah, that
And
might be
then
the third one.
is that the third one? Okay.
Yeah, because the second season, film is about like this man who dresses up like a woman and is haunting Patrick Wilson.
Oh,
But
I don't
yeah,
think I watched that one.
but that one's really good. It's exciting. But I think it like, for what they like kind of brought back horror to the mainstream. Like that and Sinister and The Conjuring. Of that time, like I feel like there was sort of a dip, and then they were like, hey, we're back now. And I think that gives them like
Well,
a
yeah.
real staple of where they are in cinema history. And that's really cool. I've gathered you all here today to talk about Bergen Film Club's opening film for the new semester. The amazing Luca Guadagnino 2017, Call Me By Your Name. So I'm going to start by just offloading the plot, and then we can talk about it. Let's
Go.
Whoa.
So we begin in somewhere in northern Italy in 1983, and we meet Elio Perlman, a 17-year-old Jewish, Italian, French, ... boy who's living with his parents in northern Italy. Elio's father is a professor of archaeology, and he invites a 24-year-old Jewish American graduate student, Oliver, to live with the family over the summer and help with his academic paperwork and studies. Elio, who is an introspective bibliophile, musician, initially thinks he has little in common with Oliver, who appears confident and carefree. However, as time goes on, Elio seems to grow increasingly jealous of Oliver's connections with others rather than himself. Over the course of the beginning of the film, they begin to spend more time together, going for long walks into town and accompanying Elio's father on archaeological trips. He is increasingly drawn to Oliver, even sneaking into Oliver's room to smell his clothes. Elio eventually confesses his feelings to Oliver, who tells him they cannot discuss such things. Later in the film, they kiss for the first time. Oliver is reluctant to take things any further, and then they don't speak for several days. Whilst this has all been going on, Elio is also dating Marzia, who is one of his female friends, and they have sex. And then he kind of leaves and goes and writes a note for Oliver to try and end the silence. Oliver writes back and asks Elio to meet him at midnight, and they agree, and then they have sex. Afterwards, Oliver says to Elio, "Call me by your name and I'll call you by mine," which is the title of the film. The morning after, Elio is briefly kind of conflicted about their encounter. There's also a really kind of gross but funny scene when he sits down at the breakfast table after they sleep together, sort of wincingly sits down at the head of the table. And he's so kind of frustrated and conflicted about his feelings here that he takes all of his sexual frustration out by masturbating with a peach. When Oliver finds him, Elio cries about how little time he realizes he and Oliver have left together. Eventually, Marzia comes back, confronts Elio about not hearing from him for 3 days, and then he basically is like, anyway, I'm going to go. As the end of Oliver's stay approaches, Elio's parents, who appear to have been aware of the bond these two have been making, recommend that he and Oliver visit Bergamo together before Oliver returns to the US. They spend 3 romantic days together, and then he leaves. Elio, completely heartbroken, calls his mother to come pick him up from the train station and take him home. Marzia is then kind of sympathetic to Elio's feelings because she was kind of rejected in a similar way, and then says that she wants to develop a friendship with him. Elio's father then delivers this gorgeous speech after observing his son's unhappiness, telling him that the friendship or relationship that he and Oliver had was rare, and he envied Elio because he was never able to have that, what the relationship that they had. During Hanukkah, Oliver then calls Elio's family, so this is a couple of months after the events of the film, to tell him that he is now engaged to be married to a woman he's been seeing for a few years. Elio is very upset by this, but then says on the phone to Oliver, "Call me by your name, I'll call you by mine." Then they do. And Oliver says that he remembers everything. After this call, Elio sits down by the fireplace and stares into the flames, tearfully reflecting as his parents and staff prepare the holiday dinner.
Now
really,
nobody has to watch it when they
No.
come to our premiere.
Exactly. I think it comes out after. I think this comes out afterwards.
Okay, then it's fine.
Yeah, the 28th. Where you're just sitting there thinking, oh my God, he's spoiling the entire plot of the film.
He's spoiling the whole film.
Holy
Dare
shit.
me.
So, in terms of styles and themes, Luca Guadagnino, who is the director of this film, I would say that this is absolutely his second best film. He described Call Me By Your Name as a family-oriented film for the purpose of transmission of knowledge and hope that people of different generations can come together to see the film, and that he doesn't necessarily see it as a gay movie, but a film about the beauty of a newborn idea of desire, unbiased and uncynical, reflecting his motto of living with a sense of joie de vivre. We should always be very earnest with one's feelings instead of hiding them or shielding ourselves. And he considers it an uplifting film, being who you want to be and finding yourself in the gaze of another and finding that reflected back to you. So I think that's pretty. I don't know that I would say it's an uplifting film for me, but
No. I also don't know if I would watch it with my family.
yeah,
I don't. What is it with you guys and not considering this an uplifting film? I'm sure we'll get to it eventually. But maybe we can start with, when did you watch it, Carolina? When did you watch it for the first time? And what did you think?
I watched it like the summer of either 2017 or 18.
Mm-hmm.
And I cried so much. And I was like around Elio's age as he is in the movie when I watched it, and just like I had this like very sad but also longing feeling of that kind of love. It's like I just thought it was beautiful and heartbreaking, and I just every time I thought about it I cried a little bit. Because it's just it's so beautiful. And I also watched La La Land the same day, which was not a good idea. So it was like
two movies about letting go of love.
Yeah, I know that was stupid of me. But I thought La La Land would be like a bit uplifting since I was sad.
Well, it is for about 2/3.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I cried a lot while watching it. I thought, it's sad and beautiful, but also in a way hopeful, I think. But yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, Bendik.
Well, I watched it at the premiere at BIFF, in which, for those who don't know, is Bergen Film Festival. I think it was the like official Norwegian premiere, like a pre-premiere. And I heard good things, and I watched it, and like Carolina, I also cried at the end and walked up. But I felt it was still an uplifting kind of end. I thought I was definitely my favorite film of that year. I loved it. I think I may have watched it twice in the cinema. And then I also showed it to my brother that Christmas when I came home. For Christmas, I showed it to him. My father came in and he watched about 10 minutes. He remarked, "Quite an age difference between those two," and he left.
No way.
Don't get me wrong, like he's not homophobic or anything. He was strictly speaking about the age gap.
I see.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
Yeah, we love Bendik style on the podcast.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my experience. I loved it. I'm sure we'll get into why we like the film, but I thought it was great. It it hits you because most people have at a certain point had those kinds of everybody has experienced a crush or falling in love or whatever and realized it won't work, and gone through what Elio goes through in the film. So it's a film that can hit everyone.
Mhm.
Which is why I understand what Luca Guadagnino was talking about trying to make it a movie for everyone, because it's not strictly a gay film. There's not that much sex in it.
No.
There's eroticism and there's skin
Mhm.
and desire, but there's no it's not that much graphic sex. The camera always pulls away.
Yeah.
I guess the only scene that would kind of make me not want to watch it with my parents is the peach scene.
You would be
Sure.
told okay with the short scene?
The short scene?
When
Yeah,
he's,
that's
like,
not that bad. He
sniffing
just
them.
sniffs the shorts. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's just
Oof.
overcome with lust.
Yeah. He is.
He is just overcome with lust.
Mhm. That's what he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've only seen it twice. I saw it in the cinema in 2017, I guess November 2017, I think. And it made me very sad because I was at the time currently super in love with someone who could never love me back. And it like definitely hit hard. And also I was like pre-exploring any like homosexual part of myself, I guess. So I kind of like had this sort of wonder about the film, but also in a way that kind of like sad that I'd never had that experience in a way. So it made me sad for a lot of reasons. And I thought that it was one of the best sad endings that I've seen in a film, because it was so like bittersweet and up for interpretation in a way that, yeah, but I found it super beautiful. I was like, I'd never really seen a film like this. I'd never seen a Luca Guadagnino film before, or like his style of directing or his camera work and stuff. And I think he's very good. And yeah, just there, like I said, like nothing that I'd ever seen before, and I thought it was amazing. And then I watched it like a year later with a friend of mine, and it fully made me sad for like 3 days. Like I remember there was like a 3-day period when I was just like, wow, life is terrible.
I don't.
Elio can't be with Oliver. That's so sad.
I don't get that. We can save that discussion to once we reach like where we talk about the ending. But yeah, I don't get it. I don't get why people think that is a tragic end. It's to me, it's something else.
I just think you really like. Oh, the film is obviously told really through Elio's perspective, and the book even more so. You're like really getting into his thoughts and his understanding of the situation. And I read the book in between my first and second watch. The book is great, by the way, if you have not read it.
Yes.
I haven't, but it is. My father has it, so I want to read it. It's at home in Vennesla. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just very like a lot of heavy emotions. I feel it's like it's a lot going on, a lot to feel and think about, because it's like it's like the same. I guess I want to compare it to Worst Person in the World, because that's also a film that had like an enormous emotional impact on me. I think it's a film that really makes you like reflect on yourself very, very much, because you kind of can't. You're like watching them fall in love and then kind of realize that you can't help but have that reflected onto yourself and thinking about your own situations like that as well. So I think, yeah, I love being sad. So that's probably why I was sad.
It kind of reminds me, when I watched it, I rewatched it on Monday in preparation for this podcast.
Very good.
And it kind of reminds me of, yes, I always bring it. I always come
do.
prepared. I do. Unlike you two, who haven't watched it in years. But okay.
I didn't
But
feel
the
like
memories,
I didn't feel
it
like it.
impacted me so much. Yeah,
Yes. Okay.
yeah.
But it reminds me of the Before trilogy, Richard Linklater's Before trilogy.
Mm.
Kind of has the same vibe. Call Me by Your Name takes place over one long summer, and it feels like those summers you hear when you experience when you're a kid, or not even a kid, maybe like a teen, and maybe even older. Those endless summers that before you had work or whatever, the summers that just went on and on and on, and you just kind of drifting through them. And that's what the movie kind of evokes to me, this sense of one long wonderful summer in Italy. And then you have the element of time, like even a long summer will eventually end the same way their romance, once it starts, heads off to its end stop, which is the train station where they separate. The same way the Before trilogy also deals with time. It takes place in very like constricted spaces. They always have time chasing them. They have a limited time to get to know each other or to fall in love. And like most people will be able to relate to that the good times, sometimes they will end, and sometimes you just feel you get dragged towards the end stop and you don't want to go. And
Real.
that's why I like the film, I think, because it gives you such a good feeling, and it's even a little bit too slow at times, but I think that's deliberate on Luca Guadagnino's part, that he wants it to feel endless until it suddenly isn't endless anymore.
Yeah, suddenly it's like cold and everything is, the warmth is kind of gone. It's winter and the love has burnt out.
Yes, and especially in the last scenes that Elio and Oliver has together when they go to the village, when they go on their own separate holiday, that's when you kind of feel like, oh, this is so nice, but you also know that, okay, this is about to end.
Yeah.
Very soon they will have to confront the sorrow about separating.
Yeah.
And
I think those like long scenes to me sort of like the stretched out when they're just kind of like observing each other, or Elio's just off doing something, riding his bike, playing guitar, swimming or whatever. I think that kind of emphasizes almost the stress of how little time they have together. Because I think at least when I was watching it, I'm like thinking like, oh, like when I remember watching it like as if I was living the situation. I was like, oh well, it's been 2 weeks and he only has 4 weeks left. Like, what are they gonna do? Time is stressful. The passage of time
is stressful. Yeah,
it is
stressful. Yeah. I think there's a good chunk of stuff to talk about here when talk about the production of the film, which I thought was pretty interesting and a lot longer than I realized. Are you ready?
We are ready.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Let me get ready. Okay. So the production of this film actually dates all the way back to 2008. Peter Spears and Howard Rosenman, who are producers of the film, read a galley proof of Andre Assman, who is the author of the book. And also galley proof is basically just a version of the book that exists before it's published. So the Call Me By Your Name book is published in 2007, and they immediately optioned the screen rights before its publication even. So before the film came out, they were like, we're going to make a film about this. And they described the writing and the setting as divine, that it was just the perfect book, and it is and will make a great film. So they immediately invited James Ivory, who's a very accomplished screenwriter and author, to write and direct and produce the film. Fun fact about James Ivory that I did not know: he is born in 1928.
Oh.
And he is still very much alive, so he would have been 90 when he wrote this film.
Oh,
good for him.
Very old.
Yeah.
And very small.
Oh,
Another fun fact about James Ivory. Yeah.
Didn't know.
Yeah, and he also wrote this really great kind of kind of similar to Call Me by Your Name. He wrote this movie Maurice, which is
Yeah.
a Hugh Grant film with this like other ginger generic looking British actor, and it's also in the same way
You're
that
talking about Martin?
yeah, it's it's kind of the same way that there's like, which is something that I was also going to show. God, I'm like derailing myself with my own thoughts.
Sorry.
No, it's me. I'm derailing myself. That Maurice is more of like the sensuality of a connection rather than the sexuality, which I think is exactly what this Call Me by Your Name is really. It's about like the sensual emotional connection between people rather than just like Brokeback Mountain fucking in the butthole. You know?
Just straight at it.
Yeah. Like
Save a horse, ride a cowboy.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's more about like the nuance of the situation, which I think James Ivory really kind of gets, and that's what makes him such a great screenwriter. However, so this was 2008 when he was brought on, but after meeting with several directors and different writers, because this was just before James Ivory signed on to be the screenwriter, the project ended up in development hell due to basically they scheduled the film to be during summer, the filming during summer, and also in Italy, in Crema. And no one could make that work because everyone was busy. So the producers eventually contacted Luca Guadagnino, who initially declined due to being busy. However, he lives in Crema, he lives in northern Italy, and he was then hired as a location consultant for the film. So that was like his role, but he was still very involved in sort of the production. And then he suggested to James Ivory that they co-direct. And then James Ivory agreed on the condition that he wrote the script. So the screenwriting process was a collaboration really between Ivory, Guadagnino, and Walter Fasano, who is a like longtime collaborator and friend and editor of all of Guadagnino's films. And this all of this writing took place between Crema in Guadagnino's kitchen, they very specifically mentioned, New York City, and James Ivory's house, which I think is in England. So the screenplay was completed in 2015. Andre Asman, the author of the book, approved and said that they have done better than the book, which I'm sure is very high praise. So the reason that the drive for, because the screenplay was, you know, like if they aren't getting anywhere with the film, with production, filming, anything, the reason that they drove for finishing the screenplay was because they wanted to secure as much funding as possible. And by having a completed screenplay, then they could do that. So they got, like funding from quite big kind of European film funding people. But I just noted that the main funder was from Frenesi Film Company, which is an Italian film company that is owned by Luca Guadagnino. So, of course, they got money from that because it's his own movie.
Yeah.
So then, interestingly, the backers of the film said that the initial costs of the estimate for the film was way too much, and the production budget was reduced from $12 million US to 3.4, and the filming schedule was cut from 12 weeks to 5. This then led to James Ivory stepping down from the direction role in 2016, leaving Guadagnino to direct the film alone. According to James Ivory, the financiers of Memento Films International did not want 2 directors involved because they thought that it would make the process awkward and make the film like take a lot longer to be made, and that it would look terrible if there was fights and so on. But Guadagnino then said that he actually thinks that the reason that they got shot down with all of these big budget things is because James Ivory's version of the film was like much more costly, and basically a different film that would have been way too expensive to make. He then wrote the screenplay, obviously, and sold the rights to Guadagnino. But basically, the vision that James Ivory had for this film was like much larger sets, much like more famous actors, and much more graphic sex scenes. He was like really pushing for that side of the film to be shown, whereas Guadagnino's, if you've like followed his work, he has 2 films before this as well, which kind of fit a trilogy of this like sensual side. But James Ivory said he was disappointed actually by the outcome of the film, that it didn't have like fucking and sucking. Yeah.
But it doesn't need it. It doesn't need it.
No,
it feels
absolutely
like
not.
an erotic film without needing to. It communicates the desire and all that stuff, the feelings of longing. It doesn't need graphic sex to tell its story.
It's sensual. It doesn't.
It's sensual. It's very sensual. Yeah.
It is.
Guadagnino curated the soundtrack of the movie by himself, and he did a great job because this film has a banging soundtrack.
The soundtrack is amazing.
I have the CD actually.
I have the vinyl.
One up. And then this kind of last fact about the production, which I just thought was like a nice little tidbit, is that the film is dedicated to the late Bill Paxton, who was a dear friend of Guadagnino and visited the set in Crema before his death in February 2017.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I know, that's so sweet.
Poor Bill Paxton. He was a very good actor.
Love him in Twister. That's one of my favorite films.
Love him in Aliens.
Yeah, so good.
He directed a very good film called Frailty, which is very good if you haven't seen it. Horror movie with Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, that sounds right up my alley. Why haven't I seen this?
Very good.
Yeah, I just thought that was like a much more in-depth than, because I always thought this film was sort of like indie and grassroots, but the production was basically 10 years, and this was even before they'd even like really discussed actors or anything. This whole to and fro with the budget and everything and the writing.
They were waiting for Timothy Chalamet.
That's like, please let him.
Waiting.
He just needs to turn 18.
Speaking
we
of that,
see him rapping. Turn 18, please.
I do have a point on that, Carolina. If you want to hear about it,
I do.
So, when it came to the casting of the film, James Ivory was gunning, running, praying, preaching for Shia LaBeouf to play the role.
Oh God,
to play the role of Oliver.
Have worked.
James Ivory really thought that Shia LaBeouf just had like the most wonderful nuance and delivered a great performance, and he was dead set on having him be in the film. But then, following an interview in 2016, James Ivory very sadly said that Shia LaBeouf was no longer involved in the process of the film, and that although he got along very well with Shia LaBeouf, the production company said that he was unsuitable due to his quote-unquote various troubles.
Oh, I'm trying to picture Shia LaBeouf in this film. No.
God.
No. Oh, thank God that didn't happen.
Yeah. James Ivory has some, like, he's, very accomplished. He is 1,000 years old, and he's done well to keep up with the times and stuff. But he, from what I was reading, he was, like, really gunning for this to be, like, an explicit 18 film, and for Shia LaBeouf to be at the helm of it, like, despite all of the kind of, I guess, negative connotation for it. He was just like, this is my vision.
I didn't.
Does the book have explicit sex scenes?
I was gonna say I don't really remember the book
I don't
being
think so.
that explicit as well. It's still like that longing. It has a very intimate scene where Elio is admiring Oliver's shit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
but it's not explicit like that.
No.
At least I can't remember it being that way.
It's very much the beginning of Mamma Mia, with he's like, then he came back to the island and ... That's what the book is
Good,
like.
you got a
Exactly.
Mamma Mia plug in there. Yeah.
Yeah,
I support it.
it's been on my mind recently.
Always on my mind.
Yeah, great film.
Great
is.
film. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of then finding a new person to take the role of Oliver, Guadagnino had been very impressed by Armie Hammer's performance in David Fincher's 2010 The Social Network, describing him as a sophisticated actor with a great range. Hammer almost, and I said kind of ironically, turned down the role because it contained nudity. And he said that there was much in the film that he had never done before. And then I wrote, despite having played a gay man twice in films.
Huh.
Had
So,
he? What?
yeah.
Where did he play?
Some kind of like political drama. He played a gay person in that, and another film. And you
Oh,
just had to believe me.
I guess so. I can.
Yeah.
I have Google right here, though. I can very.
No.
I can fact check you very quickly.
Fact check.
Joe.
You shouldn't.
No, but I think he's really good in the film, though. I think he's
yeah, I
he's
think
a good choice
yeah.
for the role, and I think he's very charming in the role, and
he is.
he symbolizes a lot of, I mean, you can understand why Elio gets smitten by him, because he's like this. He's almost like a Greek figure, almost like the statues they study.
Yeah. No. Yeah. He is. That's definitely the vibe they went for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess in the book he's younger, right? He's 20. He's supposed to be 24 years old.
24,
or
yeah.
am I misremembering? Yeah. And
Yep,
Armie
that's
Hammer
right.
was
Yeah.
like 28 or 29, and he doesn't
Yeah.
look 24.
No.
But
No.
I think it kind of works either way, even though there's a bigger age gap. At least they look older. Armie Hammer
Yeah.
looks older than what he's supposed to be. But it
Yeah.
kind of works because the whole point is Elio being innocent and discovering all these things about himself for the first time, whereas the guy he falls in love with has been around the block and he has learned some lessons, and he's probably also learned how to, I don't know, control his feelings better and be more like strategic, especially towards the end when he we don't know if he's bisexual or if he's gay, but it certainly seems like he acknowledges the love that they had, and it's presented like it's more like a strategic choice that he just chooses to be to marry a girl towards the end.
It was certainly easier in the 80s, I imagine.
Definitely, yeah, for
True
sure.
that.
So I think it works, the difference between them, because it amplifies the stages of life they're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of our leading lady, Elio, in 2013, so I think Timothée Chalamet is 2 years older than me, I think. So
What would mean
that he's 27, I guess. I'm 25 this year. So, but I'm just thinking, he was introduced to Guadagnino when he was 2013. So I guess he would have been about 16.
Oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So he was introduced, and Guadagnino was immediately drawn to this actor. Incidentally, Chalamet had already read Call Me by Your Name, and he was immediately snatched up, picked for the film. And upon his arrival to Italy, he began piano, guitar, Italian, and German lessons to prepare for his role as his character. Obviously, already speaking French, being a dual citizen of America and France. Yeah, but before the film began, I've already kind of touched on this. Timothée Chalamet and Armie Hammer signed contracts which prohibited the film from showing them with full frontal nudity. Yeah, and Ivory, like I said, his original screenplay contained quite a lot of nudity. He was dismayed by the notion. He criticized what he saw as an American attitude, saying, "Nobody seems to care that much or be shocked about a totally naked woman. It's men." Guadagnino picked the actors based on their performances and chemistry rather than on their sexuality. He said, the idea that you have to cast someone who has a certain set of skills and worse, a certain gender identity in any role, that's oppressive to me. Yeah, but then those are our two boys in this film. That's how they came to be.
Timothy is also really, really good in it, and
He is, yeah.
Mhm.
he must have been like 21 or something when they started shooting. 20 or 21, I guess.
I think so. Yeah, 2016, I guess so.
And he looks younger. He looks
Yeah.
like he could pass for 17.
Yeah.
They knew what they were doing with casting.
They knew what they were doing, and I think that is important actually, because Hollywood tends to cast a lot older actors in young roles. And when the whole point of the film being a coming of age film where the character is supposed to be young and discovering his sexuality and blah blah blah, it doesn't really make sense when the actor is 25 or 26 years old and looks like that way. It becomes a more powerful film, I think, when they choose someone who looks the part.
Yeah.
I wish Netflix would get that memo.
Oh yeah.
I wish that Netflix would get that memo of hiring people who are actually the age of their characters.
Then there's laws about sex scenes, and Hollywood.
Then it's basically children having sex, like Euphoria. Hello, 16-year-olds pounding.
Yeah, but those are a lot older, aren't they? Or did
they are
big time.
Yeah.
Zendaya is 40.
What? She's 26, which means she's 1 year too old to be in Leonardo DiCaprio's.
No,
that's true.
Kind of sad.
He will have nothing to do with her anymore.
No.
Okay, I've interrupted you a bunch of times. Please continue.
No, it's fine. But it feels a lot more realistic when Elio looks 17, and if you kind of feel a lot more for him because he looks so young and so like hopeful in a way about the relationship. But it's like, well, Oliver is older and a bit more like, the fact that he also looks older than 24 makes it seem like he knows more how this is going to go in a way.
He knows, and he's capable of dealing with it, while Oliver has that doughy-eyed optimism and the naive love of Elio has the naive and easy kind of love you experience when you're young, and you kind of let your dreams run away with you.
So no, they definitely knew to cast someone who looked younger, but it's also it what's great about casting Timothée Chalamet, because he fits the part.
And it doesn't really feel that leering. I mean, even though it shows Timothy in various stages of undress throughout the film, it doesn't feel like the camera is leering. And there's you don't feel like this is a horny director behind the camera who just wants to shoot as much as possible of this young guy in undressed. It feels very natural, and it feels very appropriate to the story and the vibe the movie is going for.
Yeah, it does.
It catches like how romantic it is.
Yes.
So perfectly. The romance of the situation and the romance of the setting. He does such a good way of like establishing that through the landscape and I guess the score is not a score because it's just different classical tracks that Guadagnino selected, but even through that, like each selected kind of classical music piece, it also is adding to this sort of like almost like whimsy of the place that they are.
Yeah, but we also have the fantastic Mystery of Love and Sufjan Stevens and his music.
I was gonna say the music that he provided to the film is just magical. It's so good, and it fits the music. It fits the film so well. And also, but Luca Guadagnino's ear for music is very good in general.
Yeah.
Like he's very good at choosing soundtracks for his films. Like he chooses a few 80s tunes in this film where Armie Hammer has some very weird dance moves.
To Love My Way.
But it's really, really good. Really good moment both of the times at the dance. One at the the club, I guess, and then one when he dances below the church.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It fits the movie really nice.
Mhm.
And he's always been great. In all the movies I've seen of Guadagnino's films, he's been really good at choosing music
Mhm.
for his films.
Mhm.
I'm like biting my tongue, not talking about Suspiria.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was a very, very good remake. I'm not. I
Yeah.
like the original one, but I think he did a really good job at making it something completely different.
Yeah.
And still retaining the vibe.
Mhm. I'm not going to talk about it because I
No.
won't stop. But we've
But-
yeah, moving on to the next topic.
Yeah, but before, since we were talking about the actors, we have to mention the parents, especially Michael Stuhlbarg,
Yes.
who plays the father. He's good in everything he's in, but he's really good in this one.
Men in Black 3.
Hmm?
Men in Black 3.
Yeah, but he elevates Men in Black 3. He's a highlight in Men in Black 3.
True that. But no, he's great in this film. He plays such a nuanced and loving, caring role. You can't,
He does,
like the scene where he's like consoling Elio towards the end of the film, talking about like the different kinds of love that people have, is just so. It's wow.
It's one of the great. Yeah, it's a really, really good monologue that could have easily. One part I like about it is that throughout the film, it depends on how used you are to watching these types of films, but it's very easy to think that at some point, since you're watching a movie about queer love or two gay people falling in love, you will get that inevitable coming out scene where he has to come out to his parents, and the movie lets you in on the fact that the mom probably knows very early, but you're not sure about the father. He's a little bit more distant, what he knows and doesn't know, and then. Yeah, at least I remember I expected when Elio sits down with his father towards the end of the film that he was gonna like come clean and come out to his father. And then instead the father just holds that beautiful monologue where he doesn't force him to say anything. He just comments on what he's seen, and we realize that he knows a lot more than what we've been thinking. And yeah, it's just it's a great monologue, and I'm sure that a lot of gay kids out there, sadly, would have wanted their father to give them that monologue instead of what they actually got. So I think that part hits hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, and it's just so beautifully done. It is.
It's really, really good and wonderfully delivered by both actors.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It really holds that moment. Their performances, you feel so captivated and kept in that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it hits at a point in the film where you need it because you've just been hit by sadness.
Yeah.
And then you get that
cradle
warmth from the father. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we touched on it. We mentioned it quite a lot there, talking about the age gap of the two characters, and that this was more of a. I just understood it as something to be kind of people might comment on it, blah blah blah, but I didn't realize that it was a much bigger comment on the film in the kind of the public and amongst the media. The film's depiction of a sexual relationship with an age disparity between these characters drew real big commentary and criticism, particularly and especially in the USA. So here, the lowest legal age of consent is higher than that in Italy. So I think it's 16 or 17 in Italy, and it's 18.
No, it's 14.
Okay.
In Italy, it's 14.
You
would know.
knew that.
I go down there to date all the time. That's it's my favorite place.
Jeez. Oh God. Anyway.
I choose holiday destination based on
no.
Don't worry, he's gonna cut it away, Colin. He doesn't dare to put that in the podcast.
I'm gonna keep that in. I'm gonna keep that in, Bendik. Oof.
Maybe it's a good thing you quit your job in child protective service.
No
Oof.
comment.
No comment. No contest. Okay. So
Okay, but yeah, 14 and 18 in the US, because US
you.
they don't think their kids have sex until they're past 18.
yeah. But I also, okay, Carolina, in Bendik's defense, I'm sure that he has to know that for his previous job.
In Italy?
Sure.
Actually, I Googled it in preparation for this podcast.
There
I
you
come
go.
prepared.
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Elio, who is 17 and was portrayed by Timothy Chalamet, who was 21 at the time of the filming, while Oliver is 24, played by Hammer, who was then 31.
He was 31? My math has failed me.
So this is, I'm not really sure why I picked this quote out, but Queer Eye host Karamo Brown criticized the movie as glorifying sexual assault and said, "It looks like a grown man having sex with a little boy." Author Cheyenne Montgomery said she was disturbed that one of the protagonists is portrayed as a boy and the other as a man, saying, "Elio is portrayed very much as a child. He shaves off the peach fuzz on his face. He cuddles with his parents. His lines are often bratty and childlike, and he's being played as a sexy romantic partner to a character who's very much being portrayed as an adult."
God, that's the whole point of the film. Why are they so stupid? The movie isn't trying to make you horny. The movie is trying to tell a story about a boy's first love.
Physicians Renee Sorrentino and Jack Turban wrote in Psychiatric Times, "This film is about sexual predation. Oliver looks much older than his reported age of 24, while Elio looks like a very young 17-year-old. The power disparity in the relationship is clear. Elio is fragile and sexually naive. Oliver is experienced and directive in the relationship. Is it appropriate for a 24-year-old experienced in drinking to have sex with an inebriated, vomiting 17-year-old?" A feature in The Advocate, which is an LGBT interest magazine, drew attention to the narrative depicting heterosexual relationships with similar or greater age gaps. So they were kind of defending it in a way. And they used the example of Gone with the Wind to throw it back a good 100 years or something, where Scarlett, the main character, is a teenager when she then meets the 33-year-old Rhett. And then their relationship goes from there, basically. But yeah, a lot more kind of fight back against that depiction of that, particularly just in the American press. But everyone else, everyone else was fine with it in the press.
Yeah, because I have seen a lot of. I have seen a lot about it on social media. So like, oh, if you like call me by your name, I don't trust you because of the age gap. It's a thing. But I don't know, isn't the age gap kind of the point of the movie?
It is. It's the point of the film. And like I said, the movie isn't trying to turn you on. You're not supposed to get turned on. You're just supposed to you're supposed to watch a story about a 17-year-old who experiences love and heartbreak for the first time. That's the whole point of the film, his coming of age. And coming of age movies has been a thing since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, people don't care when it's straight relationships. I mean, Kubrick made Lolita in 1962 or something. I can't remember there being any there was some probably surrounding the novel, but I mean, it's probably just because it's a gay relationship.
I mean,
probably.
Yeah, it also fits with the time. I think. I don't think queer 17-year-old could just walk out on the street and find another queer 17-year-old and that be a relationship.
True that.
It was probably a lot of these types of age gap relationships during that time. So it fits the time.
And it's not like that has gone away. I mean, there's still age gap. I'm not sure if there are more age gaps. If age gap is more common in queer relationships, or if it's more common in straight relationships. There's certainly a lot of old white men with 20-year-old wives.
Yep.
Also in the gay community. I mean, didn't Jan Thomas, didn't he, his boyfriend was like 19 and he was 45?
Yes. Something like
And the
that.
media was just like, oh, they're so happy together. I mean,
Yeah. Was that his old boyfriend, Christopher?
yeah, was that Christopher, the one they
Yeah.
did that comic, that cartoon on?
Iconic piece. TV show history, amazing. But yeah, I also think Jan Thomas knew, not gonna say this is true, but I think his new boyfriend is also a lot younger.
Yeah.
So,
and it's not like those boyfriends hasn't been, they don't know how to consent. And I when I watched Call Me by Your Name, I was looking for, when I rewatched it on Monday, I was like looking, is there any like signs of grooming? Is there any way this can be interpreted as creepy with new eyes? But I didn't really see it. I didn't see anything in Elio that portrayed him as this weak character that made Oliver prey upon him. It felt very natural. If he was 17, he knows what he's doing. He's falling in love. He's naive. He's blah blah blah. But he's certainly not being groomed or abused.
No,
I don't think so.
But you could also argue like the naiveness it's easy to groom someone who is naive. So one could argue that to not completely dismiss the age gap thing, but it's
you can question, and I guess this is what maybe is the weakness with Armie Hammer's age, because the fact that he's 31 and not 24 like the character in the book makes it easier to criticize him for, okay, even though he's supposed to be 24 in the film,
but he
doesn't look like that. He looks 30. And so it's easier to criticize him for, okay, but why on earth are you choosing to go after this 17-year-old boy? Why can't you find someone else? And I guess maybe it's not that easy in the Italian countryside, but maybe he could just stay celibate for that summer,
It's just a couple of weeks.
It's just a couple of weeks.
It's not hurting anyone.
But they end up falling in love, and it seems it's genuine. In the movie, it's portrayed as genuine what they have. It's not like he's preying on him or anything. Should we talk about the actual ending when he goes into
Sure.
Because I think that it's one of those you want to do what?
I would just got only like 2 points after this, but I think that's a good time to talk about the ending. Go for it, Bendik.
Okay, no, I just wanted I want you guys to comment on it as well, but I think that it's just one of those perfect endings, like one of those few moments where you watch a film and you think, as it ends, it's just perfect. This is exactly where it should end. This is great, and it's almost what makes the whole movie for me. It's that scene where he sits down, the music starts, and you just watch him through the credits, just processing grief. He processes, he keeps he listens to his father, he keeps the pain, and he feels the pain, and then he kind of works himself through it. And at the end, before the movie fades to black, you see some optimism in the smile. You see kind of that he's still sad, but he knows that this could be the start of something good, and that he's learned something about himself that he will bring with him for the rest of his life.
Yeah,
it's a really, really good scene.
It truly is one of those rare perfect endings to a film. I feel like with a lot of films you can look at the ending and be like, oh, they could have done this different, they could have done this instead, but with Call Me by Your Name, it's like, yes, this is it, this is perfect, this is what I wanted. I'm crying my eyes out, but it's what I wanted.
I love the conversation that they have on the phone. Is that like what it would have been 5 or 6 months after the events of the film and stuff, that like it almost could have felt like you've had enough time to kind of sit there and stew and think about it, that it might not have been as grand and beautiful as Elio would have imagined it in his head, because that's his first love, first expectation of something, that it was this like big tumultuous grand love, and then just to have Oliver like kind of validate it and confirm it still by saying that he remembers everything. And I can imagine that it doesn't make the fact that Oliver announces that he is engaged to be married to a woman, kind of like validating his feeling and his understanding that what they had was like something really real. And then, like you say, Bendik, then he has the time to sort of sit with that and realize that, like, it sucks that what has happened and they're apart, and that's sad, but you can still hold this perfect endless summer in your mind as like a perfect and wonderful experience of learning who you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is a part of what he has to learn. I mean, like it's especially when you're young and when you fall in love or have crushes for the first time, it's easy for you to your brain runs away with you, and you imagine a whole life with that person in 30 seconds, give or take. And there's a lot, it's perfect love. There's no consequences to it. It's just in your mind, it's just perfect. And you start to believe almost that you're meant to be together. And that's probably what Elio thinks during that summer, that they're meant to be together and that they're supposed to have this happy life together. And when he's confronted by the stark reality of the times and of the fact that Oliver isn't necessarily the perfect guy he had that romance with, then he gets that hard dose of reality. But it's still kind of positive that he processes that. Now he's wiser. He knows more the next time he goes into a similar thing.
Yeah. So I think we have some like post-film things to talk about now as we wrap up this wonderful episode. This film garnered huge success. It like made, I didn't write down exactly how much money it made, but it made a lot more than its initial budget, which of only 3.4 million, and it made like way more than that. So did very well. It made and had a huge international fan base during like the festival run. People were coming from all around the world just to see this film. And in 2018, an author called Bob Morell published a book which collected stories from fans all around the world who came to see this film and what the film like meant to them as well, which I think is really special, and it's something that even sits with a lot of people now and stuff. So it would have meant a lot to a lot of people. My fun, interesting point was by early 2018, the film had attracted a following in China amongst heterosexual women who perceived it as a Western, quote unquote, boys' love romance, evidenced by its popularity on the Chinese social network and media database Douban. And I was saying to Caroline before we started recording, I kind of knew this as well, because after I saw the film, I was like kind of also obsessed with it in a way, and I followed this account of this woman who paints only like stills from the movie, and she's Chinese. I found out she is a Chinese heterosexual woman. She is one of these which I just think is like, I mean, wonderful that they can engage in I guess we don't necessarily always think of China as the most open country, but I guess it's kind of it's nice that they're, through this Western boy love, they can enjoy any gender and sexuality expression. How lovely. Even you can enjoy love under a dictatorship.
I have to say I am curious if they have read Dick Fight Island. Because it feels like
you were gonna get it in there.
Also a recommendation, Dick Fight Island. No, but it's I believe a very similar audience. It sounds like it's a similar audience with Dick Fight Island, because there is a lot of women who read Dick Fight Island. So it feels like it's a thing. I believe it's a thing. Yeah.
And Dick Fight Island is a manga, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. It's like homoerotic content specifically for heterosexual women.
Yeah.
I guess. But that's just, it's nice. Good for them.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah. Also during the filming, so the filming was in Crema in northern Italy. An Italian fan published the coordinates of the filming location, and then it was flocked with fans. And now the city of Kerma offers official Call Me By Your Name tours.
Oh,
How
Yeah, I
lovely.
want to go there. I really want to go
Yeah.
there. It's beautiful.
So, as we said, the film was a huge hit. Oscar nominations, Golden Globes, BAFTAs, everyone loved it. We don't need to talk about it. Everyone knows. So following the success of the film, there was clearly a lot of interest by executives and those involved in the film in having a sequel.
Yeah.
And it really seems like it was just destined to head into this production hell situation once again. Everyone seemed to have a lot of ideas coming from the time period that it would be set in or the topics that would be discussed. Say that, for example, waiting until Timothy Chalamet was 26 and setting it after the fall of the Berlin Wall, Elio hiding his sexuality, Oliver married with children. But it seems that like all of these ideas kind of just ran and nothing kind of concrete happened. Armie Hammer in an interview said that it will definitely happen because a lot of people want it to happen. Although James Ivory said that he would not be joining, and he even stated that Andre Asselman also thought that it was a bad idea. But Andre Asselman at the time was working with Luca Guadagnino, developing an idea for it because he was just about to release the sequel to Call Me By Your Name, Find Me. So James Ivory was spouting a lot of hateful shit, apparently.
He didn't get his dicks on screen, so he had to be a dick about it.
Yeah.
Didn't get his porn.
No. But I'm sure it exists. I'm sure you can find it. It was then suggested that the film would take on a similar approach to Richard Linklater's 2014 film Boyhood, and that it would add Dakota Johnson to the cast to play Oliver's wife. Dakota Johnson has worked with Luca Guadagnino many times. And I also noted that Dakota Johnson and Armie Hammer have starred in the worst film that I've ever seen, Wounds, together on Netflix.
Yeah.
So if you want any idea of what kind of chemistry those two could have, go watch that film. Some of the worst writing that I've ever seen in any film ever. So, yeah. So it was like all of these ideas that they were going to wait until they were the age of the characters in the book, which was like Elio being late 30s, Oliver being in his 50s, and they reconnect, which I think is what happens in the book. I haven't read it.
I thought the book was mostly about the father's old romance on a train or something.
He talks to, I read parts of it, if I remember correctly, he talks to someone about his like old love on the train while going to Rome, I think, to meet Elio. And Oliver is also there. Yeah.
Yeah. But dun dun dun. Even in 2020, there were still pre-production plans being made until a series of allegations against Armie Hammer of emotional abuse and cannibalistic fetishism in early 2021 resulted in his removal from nearly all upcoming projects. And then this added raising doubts to the prospects of there being a sequel. But actually, Michael Stuhlbarg said that he hopes that the film will still be made. In May 2021, Guadagnino, despite being super excited by the idea of a sequel, said in an interview with Deadline that a sequel was no longer in his priorities. He hinted that beyond the complications related to Hammer's scandal, Chalamet himself would be very busy with other films in the near future, which led him to put the project aside.
Well, he's doing an adaptation of the new Bret Easton Ellis novel, Shards, I think, the author of American Psycho. I really want to read it. It's next on my list. But he's
American Psycho?
No, I've read American Psycho, but the author, Bret Easton Ellis, he released a new novel this year called Shards. And Luca Guadagnino has announced that's going to be his next project, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a serial killer story.
Hell yeah. But But yeah, that's
Yeah,
the situation with the sequel.
Well, I don't think we
That's
need it.
good.
I think I don't want to see a sequel. I don't want. It's so difficult to do it right.
Yeah.
And I think the power from this movie, Call Me by Your Name, stems from the fact that they probably won't get together, and that's a lesson that a lot of us will learn during the course of our life. And to ruin that by, I don't know how the second movie would have ended, but if it would have, I'm sure it would have ended with them getting together or something, so as to not repeat the theme of the first one.
I know
Or
they
maybe
could have
it was-
followed the before trilogy, kind of.
Yeah, Before Trilogy is one of the few who actually did it correctly. Like the last Before Midnight actually examines love in a real life, and you get the hard dose of reality after 2 movies that kind of glamorizes love. And if they'd done that, maybe, but I don't think I want to see them get together. I think the whole point is that Elio learns his lesson and then moves on.
Guadagnino's vision actually for the sequel is that, like, in whatever age it takes place for the character of Elio, that he would be like closeted in the 90s. That was his kind of idea for the film, aside from like the book.
Well, I'm sure he could have done it because he's a really good director.
Yeah.
He is.
And so far, he hasn't made a bad film, at least none of what I've seen. Well, I've only seen Suspiria and Bones and All, but I liked Bones and All. I thought even though it felt a little bit like Call Me by Your Name too, it was still really nice. It's a good
They
film.
really amped up the cannibalism, and if we got the cannibalists.
Yeah, they did. And they also, I mean, he's playing on the fact that you'll recognize the Call Me by Your Name DNA because he casts the same actors. I mean, Michael Stuhlbarg pops up in Bones and All in a very, very creepy role, completely different from the warm father he plays.
Yeah.
Just like I made peace with Muhammad being a cannibal.
Well, I made peace with Mel Gibson. I will always love Mel Gibson, despite he's being a horrible person in real life, most likely.
Yeah.
I will love him in his films. I made peace with that. I can go on record say I will always be a fan of Mel Gibson in movies.
Armie Hammer couldn't, like, I don't think that I would be in danger because I don't think that I would be very good to eat.
You would be very bony.
Exactly.
He also allegedly killed someone, though.
Cool.
Just saying.
Well, rich people, they can.
Rich people can kill people.
Yeah. That's the way. I could have a PowerPoint presentation on this. Just saying.
You should. We can do a bonus episode where you can just talk about.
Do it in the intro when you introduce Call Me by Your Name. Just make it an hour where you have a full PowerPoint.
Yeah.
People forget they're there for the movie.
Carolina's going to be on the next episode for her movie, but she can just talk about that instead.
I think so. People will listen.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, well. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. It's been really great. I think a great kickoff to the new season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck with editing this, because I think we've been talking for like 2 hours plus.
2 hours.
Oh, it's okay.
You were aiming for 1 hour.
It's because I was tired. That's it. Wasn't any editing reason. It's because I felt really tired from work today. But I feel energized. I had my tea before I did this, so I'm good.
That's good.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's not like anybody in the board will listen to this anyway, so it can go on as long as it wants.
So
exactly.
True.
Who are we going to trash talk now?
Who can we can trash talk anyone. None of them will listen. Maybe Martin will listen.
Yeah, maybe.
But
it's just you two, my biggest fans.
It's just
Actually, Bendik's Snapchat group is my biggest fan.
Well, yeah, I have some friends who in solidarity listen, but they're from Venezuela, and this episode is about gay content, and they don't like gay people in Venezuela, so they probably won't listen. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'll just call the episode like Rambo or something.
Yeah. Lure them in, and I'll do that on the podcast. And I know in the Snapchat I'll say, talking about Rambo, please go listen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thanks both for being on the podcast again. It's been great.
Of course.
Love having you guys on.
It's been fun.
It's
Yeah.
been really fun. Yeah.
Yeah. We finally did a podcast together, Bendik. It's like,
Yes. The three of us. Wow.
yeah,
It was so nice.
it was.
Yeah.
And you didn't cook up any snarky, sexist comments. I was expecting you to, but
I did not. I can behave. Yeah.
He's growing.
Impressive.
He's growing.
I'm growing as a person. It's been enlightening to be in the BFK board.
This has been a Bergen Film Club production. Our music is by Wise John. Check them out on Instagram at WISEJohnOfficial. Our logo is by Pia Sofia Brentersen. This episode was produced, mixed and engineered by Joe Lawrence. Our researchers are Inke Shilpkai-Ben and Mamina Nazmajid. Want to talk to us about films? Then please send us an email at podcast@bergenfilmclub.com. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at TheRealThingPod. Check us out on Letterboxd at BFK The Real Thing. Thank you and goodbye. Listen, follow, leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, or wherever it is that you get your podcasts.